And Susan Duku is our sign language helper for this morning. Welcome, Susan. Well, you see, in 2017, the government launched the Big Four agenda, and one of the agenda was constructing about 1 million affordable homes in the next 5 years. Of course, it was an expensive undertaking that is likely to cost trillions of shillings, and this was expected to be done through exchequer funding as well as private sector contribution. Along the way, there has been challenges, of course, and the government has been very adamant in saying that this has to work. Where are we in terms of implementation? About 2 months ago, the Gara housing project, if you like it, the Park Road housing project, was almost handed over to potential buyers. But of course, there was a little bit of hiccups here and there. And so the project is still under construction. And a lot of people are complaining about, the cost of those units. If you can allow me to put you through the proposed packages, for those units. A two-bedroomed house was going for 3 million shillings, and a three-bedroom house was going for 3.5. And a lot of people are saying, look here. I mean, how affordable is this, to low-income earners? That was the debate, and a lot of people were putting questions, and arguing that this was definitely out of reach for most Kenyans. And the question that has not been yet dealt with is, how affordable are the affordable homes or houses, if you like it? Well, joining us this morning is Nixon Otieno. He's a programs manager at Habitat for Humanity, which is a local NGO that deals with helping communities to put up homes that are affordable. And he'll be helping us to understand, when we talk about affordable houses, what exactly do we mean? What economic range should we be targeting? Thank you so very much indeed, Nixon, for finding time to be with us this Thursday morning. First of all, tell me, or help us understand this. I mean, a lot of people keep on talking about affordable houses. When you look at the economic well-being of the Kenyan society, what would you define as affordable housing?
Thank you very much. First of all, it's good to know, to let the viewers, I work for Habitat for Humanity Kenya. Our goal is to provide affordable and decent housing, and we are focused on the low income. Currently, we are working in Laikipia and Homa Bay. So far, we've already constructed about 100 houses in those areas for the last 4 years. Our vision is to ensure that at least we scale up this construction to probably construct 100 per year, not within the 4 years. And this can only happen if we move away from focusing on individual house construction to looking at the other broader issues within the economy. To be able to answer your question, affordability, we look at it in terms of whether the housing unit is affordable to certain income groups. And here we are looking at the medium income groups. If you look at the per capita income in Kenya, and below. That's when you can be able to analyze very well the issue of affordability. But it's good for me just to unpack it from the statistics you've given, because the cost of a two-bedroom house is 2.3 billion. Yeah. Take that and probably analyze the situation of an average Kenyan. If you say our per capita is about 100,000 Kenya shillings, per year. So how long will it take for this person to afford this house? That's about 23 years. Is a whole lifetime. It's a whole working life. By the time you have the house, you are probably old. You are probably getting to a different kind of lifestyle. You are probably even thinking of a different way. So there must be other ways of trying to see that this cost, one, it goes down. Secondly, we must find ways of ensuring that the average Kenyan can be able to access resources to be able to purchase these units. We must be able to see that we also focus on trying to ensure that there's availability of manpower services that this average Kenyan can be able to access, because most of the average Kenyan are used to ways of construction which is incremental, mostly because they can't access capital.
Yep.
So they do it in bits. So they need to be supported in this direction. And we must also ensure that land is also available and affordable, because this is also one of the challenges. You find that when you look at the cost of housing itself, land alone is taking about 40%.
40%.
Construction is also taking another big chunk, another 40%. Yeah. Probably the issue of labors and other things, all these approvals may take another 20%. So the areas where we need to look keenly to bring this down is on the area of land. Number two, the area of construction materials.
Yeah. I mean, when you consider the fact that 46% of the Kenyan population live below $3 a day, or about 350 shillings, on a daily basis, and majority of them, they work from hand to mouth, and so saving to buy a house may be the last idea or the last option when it comes to their financial management. Then how do you ensure that even people, at the bottom of the pyramid are factored in when it comes to ensuring that they also has a decent house?
Let's say 30% who also cannot even afford, let's say, something like $2.5 per day. So probably if you're talking of the 300 bracket, you'll probably shift even much higher to a bigger figure. So probably we may get to much higher percentage.
The more you analyze those data, I mean,
exactly.
the worse the situation.
The worse situation it is. So I can conclusively say that actually it's not just the 46% who can't afford. I think it's even up to 80% who can't afford to set aside some savings to be able to buy the house at the current rate. So it's quite a situation that needs to be looked into, and the solution will be to try and find a way of how we can have housing products that are focused on this category. Currently in the market, most of the housing products are focused more on the middle income and the high income groups. So something needs to be done to this category. We probably need to see what can be done in terms of ensuring that incentives are provided to housing construction companies so they can focus on this segment. This may include, for instance, providing land, which is one of the biggest costs. It requires a situation where probably the government can enter into a public-private partnerships with private developers. So that land is already accessible. Secondly, another big pull and incentive will be to ensure that this land is serviced. It's not just about providing land. There is water, there is access to certain other facilities that will be attractive to developers. And definitely they will probably see this as a viable opportunity to construct low-cost housing that is accessible to the low-income groups that we are speaking about. And there can be an arrangement where they can find a way of how to be able to get back the capital that they have invested. And probably after getting their returns, then offer this housing for social housing. And this can be available even at low rent cost, or it can be on rental basis. You rent and purchases based on rent. That can be one good solution, but there are many other solutions out there.
You see, the issue of social housing, or ensuring that people or the masses, they have decent houses, it's not a new concept. If you look at Kenyan history, in 1927, the colonial masters, embarked on such an exercise, to try and construct affordable housing for migrating Africans who were coming into the city. And Eastlands was actually zoned off as a place where they were to put up affordable or cheap houses for the migrating Africans who are coming from the rural to urban areas, the urban being Nairobi here. And that's how estates like Kaloleni and so much came into force. And the project actually fell through because the targeted mass actually did not have the capacity to repay for the mortgage for these houses. And so the same challenges that bedeviled the project back then, we're still having them even today. And so the question is, how then do you, number one, ensure there are houses to be purchased, and number two, that they are within financial range of the targeted people?
Yeah, the products have to be there. The housing units have to be there. We must find a way of ensuring that the supply is there. Because I would probably say demand for housing is there. We already know that the housing deficit in Kenya currently is at 2 million. It's growing by about 200,000 every year. The government has already committed to ensure that we have at least 500,000 houses, let's say by 2021, or let's say 2022 thereof. We have started at least something, but more needs to be done because with the projects that you mentioned before, the Ngara project, the Maboko and the others, we are probably seeing some 6,000 to 7,000 units probably emerging in this current situation. So more needs to be done to get to the 500. And even if we got to the 500, we are still not able to kill the cumulative deficit, because if it's accumulating by 200,000, then you can say in 5 years we have 1 million deficit added to the 2 million. So even the 500,000 will only reduce the incremental deficit by half. So probably we may have still 2.5 going onwards as a deficit. So there's more that needs to be done to supply more houses in order to be able to kill this deficit. And I had started by saying that there's need to be able to look at how to bring the cost down in the first place. We have many technologies that can be able to demonstrate that housing can be constructed at a low cost. Habitat Kenya, for instance, for the houses that we are constructing for vulnerable, because vulnerable people, we are investing in that construction. And of course, as we construct, the technology is also being adopted within the communities we are working. So the model is able to provide housing to even more than the vulnerable. So a house is costing about 850,000. 850,000. Of course, without putting the cost.
That is a one-bedroom house.
It's a big house. It's 2-bedroom. It has many things. It has a sitting room. It has other things. We also have for you a latrine, also by the side somewhere there. So it's a complete house, very decent.
850,000.
A walled, walled, of course, with interlocking blocks. We also have situations where we also use stone constructions, depending on circumstance. Roofing materials, the normal iron sheets. And you end up with a nice, decent house. The plinth area is 45 square meters. That's a big house. 45 square meters is a big house. Yeah, my own house is about 100 square meters myself, where I live. So you can imagine somebody in the village having 45. That's a big house.
But and how much would that space cost in that area?
The costing is 850,000.
That is for the land, and
that is just for the construction, the house
construction.
Yeah,
so you haven't factored in.
I haven't factored in the land, but you know, land in rural areas is not expensive. An acre average is about 300,000.
Where is this?
You go to my place in Sierra, there you'll find all of them. An acre you will get. You want me to take you there?
We need to move over there.
Yeah. So you can imagine.
My county, an acre will cost you about 3 to 4 million shillings.
Wow.
So that's beside the point. So from your experience, I mean, it is possible to put up a 2-bedroom house. With under $1 million bob, right? It's
possible. When you already have the land in place, it's possible, and you can do it. Let me even just leave the example of Habitat, because maybe I may be speaking too internal. Go to Mombasa. I've seen companies, and I don't want to. It's not. I wouldn't like. It's not for me to mention here. But I know companies that are currently doing construction, where you'll get a mansionette. A mansionette is both downstairs and upstairs. Yeah, even though there are mansionettes that are adjacent to each other, wall to wall. But it's possible for you to get a house at 1.5 million, land plus house and everything.
Masonite.
Yeah, everything is standing up. So why did, and that's a 2-bedroom, decent, affordable. So it's something working. Yeah. I think one of these days we can take a ride, probably show you one of the models so that
Absolutely.
you can have,
I'm looking
you
forward
can have
to
an
that.
idea. Yeah.
Let's wait for.
Yeah. So they are good people and players doing beautiful work out here. The issue is why are we not scaling up what they are doing? Why are you not taking it as an? Why are we not learning from there? Yeah. What is the problem? Yeah. And it's already working on the ground. Yeah.
And I mean, help me understand things. I mean, when you look at, you know, the Park Road project, where, you know, phase 1 is complete and ready for occupation, a 1-bedroom unit, you know, will go for 1.5 million shillings. A 2-bedroom unit will go for 2 million, and 3 will go for 3M. Would you consider this to be affordable in a setup like Nairobi, for example?
You see, if I was just to look at it minus land, you are probably coming to the affordability scale. So the issue of what is raising the price of that house is the land. And mind you, that 1.5 is an apartment. And I won't be surprised if the Plint area is probably the 45 square meters that I'm speaking about, or even much lesser.
Yeah. So
something can still be done to bring the cost down.
But by what margin, for example?
I'm still seeing that it's possible still to get some 30% off. I've already spoken to you about how
so
you're able to do it.
It's about 1.2, 1.25?
Yes, 1.2, I believe, with Nairobi. It's possible if you manage this cost of land. The question is, do we really need to build it? Is it a must that it is in Ngara? If the prices of land are hiking, because here we are seeing a lot of speculators. Even before a project is done, we don't know how they get to know. Where maybe it is inside information and the prices are hiking. So the question is where to site it. It's the location, and also to ensure that we advance more to materials, because I would be keen to know whether the project you're speaking about, 1.5, what kind of material are they using that can be able to bring that
so
down?
A lot of things, you know, have to be put into play, you know, before you conclude that this is indeed expensive or this is affordable. I mean, I want you to hold your thoughts on that, because we'll be coming back. We want to dash to the Sonke suburb of Karen. What's happening there? The Kenya Defence Staff graduation. This is for senior staff, definitely. Let's see how the whole thing is panning out, and let's see who exactly is being decorated. We now take you to the Kenya Defence College in the suburb of Karen here in Nairobi and see the graduation ceremony.
Indeed, a very good morning. Graduation from the Defence Staff College here in Karen, Nairobi. We're coming to you live from the Defence Staff College here in Karen, Nairobi, whereby we're witnessing, or we're going to.
You see, the most interesting part about Karen is that it's a highly wooded area with a lot of trees. And so you'd expect a lot of challenges, you know, when it's come to network, because of, you know, network movements there. But one thing I can assure you is we now want to, you know, our engineers will try and work it out and ensure that we got to Karen and actually witness that graduation ceremony. Remember, we are discussing the affordable housing concept here in Kenya. Why is it becoming a challenge, actually, not only to the government, but also to the private sector? And we are drawing lessons from, you know, organizations that are trying to do this. And one of them is, what's the name of this company? I mean, it's Habitat for Humanity. There you wow. I'm still thinking about Karen and how we're going back there. But let's come back to the studio. Habitat for Humanity, I mean, they have been in this business now. Remember, the mother company is headquartered in the US, whereby, you know, they are in a number of states where they have been trying to come up with mass housing concepts, over the years. There are some success stories in there. They're also in Asia. They're also in Europe, where they're trying the concept of, ensuring that each person can afford a decent house. And the question is, what can we learn? What can the government learn? And what can Kenya learn out of their experience? They are in several counties, some of them being Laikipia and Homa Bay. And according to them, it is possible to put up a 2-bedroom unit at a cost of less than $1 million bob. The question is how? And that's the discussion we are having here in the studio with Nixon Otieno. He's the Senior Programs Manager at Habitat for Humanity. The discussion has been ongoing, but welcome if you just joined us. Nixon, I was asking you, when you look at the units that are complete, at Park Road, where the government has constructed apartments with 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. And when you look at the cost being offered, the agreement here was it can be brought down further. And your argument is this can actually go down by about 30%, bearing in mind that the cost of land in Nairobi is definitely not as the same as you would have in Laikipia or Homa Bay, for example. And you are bringing another argument here. Must these houses be built in Park Road, which is a walking distance from the city center, and you would expect, land here to be very expensive? What other alternative would be there?
We have to look at these things, not just the situation now. We're also planning for the future. The reason why we are all congregating in one place and everybody wants to be in one place is because all the services are here. Everybody is looking for one thing or another. So we have to think of a model where we have to decentralize these services so that we can also be able to access other good areas that can give indicators to developers to be able to construct housing. But there's one dimension that I also need to bring in terms of the affordability, because it's not so much about just the cost of material. You need to look at if we were to have Angara project, what happens in the background until it gets there? Because there's all this chain of all these transactions that are probably happening. There's all these chains of money being lent. There's all this chain of interest having to come out. So if the cost of all this transaction is high, then definitely the cost of that house is also going to be high. And you can see in our situation, we have a model that has been able to bypass all these things. Because first of all, at community level, we have been able to train artisans who can be able to do that job in a very efficient way. Because when you have housing construction that is done on time and things are provided on time, you have a variety of units, several of them, that can be done in a way that you can be able to optimize on the efficiency, then definitely the cost will go down. So these are some of the factors that we need to look at. Could the cost be going high because of this transaction? Is the capital that is being used to construct these houses expensive? Are there some other alternative? And probably there's need to be able to find how we can be able to finance, be able to provide financing that can enable the common person to be able to construct housing, because mortgage is quite expensive, and mortgage is also provided to a given category. There's a category that cannot access mortgage from the financial institutions, either due to many other factors. Like I told you, who would want to see you paying a house for all that long? I spoke about 23 years plus. It could even be more. So we have to think of products that are geared towards supporting this group. It must be able to be financing that is also affordable, financing that has a payment period that can be able to take care of the situation of the common person.
And so, so according to you, there are multiple things or factors, that have to be considered before we can sing hooray that we have crossed the border or the bridge of affordable housing. And one of them, of course, you're saying it is land. The other being, the cost of material. And land, accounting for almost 45%, of the entire cost. How then do we ensure that we bring down the other cost of construction material, which also takes up a significant cost of building a house?
Try and explore many other things. Think of locally available materials. These are things that can be able to bring the cost down. And I believe locally we have the capacity to be able to manufacture some of these things.
Yeah.
You also have to think in terms of the cost of doing business, because all these materials to be produced, even moving construction materials from where we're getting them, stone from a quarry, there are all these charges that are all the way coming from the counties up to where the material is. That is raising the cost of this material. So we have to look at many other factors. So technology, training the artisans, that is one way that we can be able to ensure that the cost of building goes down.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you see, you're bringing a very interesting issue here. Must we put up these houses in Nairobi, for example, in areas close to the city center where you'd expect lands to be expensive? I've seen a situation whereby people who, for example, work in Switzerland, and I have experienced these. For example, the city of Geneva, which is a very expensive city to live, you find that because the border between Switzerland and France is well developed, and they are, they have trams, they have trains, and they have buses, crossing the two countries. And so you find a lot of people who live or who work in the city of Geneva, they live in France, for example, and they live within a radius of 100 kilometers. And the process of crossing the border is very simple, or is very easy. And also commuting is also very comfortable because they have trains, they have very comfortable buses and so much. Is it possible, for example, to put up affordable houses in, let's say Nanyuki or Nyeri, and then you have people working in Nairobi? Is it possible?
Thank you. I think you're looking for the vision many years to come, which is good, yeah. But it's a process that can go incrementally. You don't have to go very far. You incrementally ensure that you occupy the boundaries as you continue. Currently, you're already seeing people are living in Machakos and they are coming into town, living into Kitengela. From Kitengela, you have to go to Machakos, then you come to Nairobi, and it's working for them.
And Kitengela is in Kajiado County.
Yes, it's in Kajiado County.
So you have to cross two counties before you come to Nairobi.
Yeah. So these are wise people. You have already calculated the rent you are paying, and you are doing it in terms of 5 years. You're already seeing a house. So definitely you have to go. You have to go for the house. So and as you continue doing this, the services also is going to move slowly closer to the people. There's no way sometimes you will say that it is at the beginning people also move closer to the service, but people also have a pull on the services. So that's something that can be done on a continuous basis. What is actually needed is one of it is a will and a vision on where we are heading about this. And definitely we'll be able to achieve that. We are happy that at least the government is trying to work out on the issues of commuters. So the railway is at least there, the commuter railway that is bringing people to town. I've seen it, it's now even being extended. The one for Mombasa Road from Syokimau, it will go to be starting from Athi River, and it will also all go all the way to Kitengela. If you were to walk down there, you'll find that at least some train stations are currently being constructed. And a huge population of Nairobi is on the other side. Also try and also do the other corridor that also goes all the way towards the Eastlands, Kahawa, all the way. You do all this, then you will ease the movement of people into towns. Nobody would want to find it more favorable to live within the town so that you can be able to access your job. Because the current situation we are seeing is because people are suffering. People are held up in jam for long hours. People don't want to be in a situation where they're struggling to get to their workplaces. So they would rather live closer to town. The other thing is people are looking for services. So maybe the services here are so good. Water is available, electricity is available, sewer. Yeah, you want to go to hospital, look at Ngara, people are just looking at the hospital just there. All these nice hospitals are around. You are looking at the markets. So people are looking at access to these services. So why not ensure these services are all over? And automatically you'll see that the demand for settlement within closer to the city is going to disappear. More people will want to continue going out there. So first of all, it's I would say it's a situation that is already happening. If we don't manage it, it's probably going to happen and it's going to come out in a probably different way. What if the people out there settle everywhere and take every land to an extent that you cannot be able to do any other public utilities? That will be a very bad planning situation. A good planner should be able to see the trend and where things are going and be able to plan for it. Yeah, don't just allow when people are already settled, that is when now you say this place was meant for a sewer. This was meant for this thing. Yeah, I think something needs to be done well in advance. Yeah.
You're talking about, bringing services closer to the city, to the people. And we all know definitely that a lot of people who actually live in Nairobi would not want to live here because of congestion, the issues of pollution. You're talking about water, and we know that the city suffers acute water shortages, and even service delivery to the people is actually wanting. You go to almost all estates and you find mountains of garbage, uncollected garbage. And so people do not live here because they would want to, but it's because a lot of people are forced to live here. And if the government wants to improve infrastructure, for example, why would it make a lot of sense, to have a light rail from, let's say, Naivasha, which is about 80 kilometers from Nairobi, from Naivasha, connecting the city of Nairobi, bringing thousands of workers into the city center?
First of all, land is available. I think the issue, what is scarce is housing land, land that can attract housing development. That is what is scarce. And the faster we be able to ensure we get services there, then we'll be able to unlock that land that probably developers are not seeing, and they will definitely be rushing there to ensure that something is done. And it's also good that we are seeing some efforts from government, only that it needs to be scaled up, because the SGR from Naivasha, you can move from Naivasha, this place, Maimahiu, you can move all the way to Syokimau, then take the commuter train to town. The only problem is the hassle, the hours, you can imagine, all those moving and interchange. So the sooner they build one, coming straight to the city center. Yeah, that will be
the central railway station.
Exactly, that will be the better solution. But like I said before, I think it is about these services. The reason why we are missing, we are having water scarcity in Nairobi, we probably say the growth, and in terms of Nairobi, is probably overwhelming the services. Probably the founders or those who had planned for this never anticipated this kind of demand.
Actually, the city was planned for 500,000 people.
Exactly. But now you can see we are more than 4 million people. So the infrastructure and services have to go in tandem with the population. But that one is now water in the bridge. I think more focus needs to be done to ensure that more people move out, even as we try to scale up the infrastructure here. I agree with you, the issue of ensuring that there's efficient transport, that will be good as well, so people don't have to live here, all of us. But still, we must ask ourselves, what do people come to do here in Nairobi? I'm driving all the way, then I'm coming into the studio here. So why can't we have this studio in somewhere up? I'm just trying to imagine that it is as a result of certain things that we are connected to that must bring us here. So it is possible. And with the county systems and the way we are seeing and the way they are growing, and we are already seeing that we have very progressive counties. It is possible to have some of the services to be settled in the neighboring counties. They can be able to, I mean, even if national government is running these services, but they could be in the counties, because counties are also emerging as centers of settlements. So we only need to do that, assist these neighboring counties, and you'll see how Nairobi is going to be decongested. So that's something that can be done. Yeah.
And let's look at the issue of, financing, houses. And when you look at the total issued mortgage portfolio in Kenya, is less than 3.5% of all total issued loans in this country, which tells you that a lot of people either do not qualify for mortgages, or banks are not willing to offer mortgages to majority of their customers. How do you then address this issue to ensure that people have access to mortgages in this country?
Yeah, they are probably responding to market indicators. The market indicators, and they're in business, is probably telling them that this level of mortgage given to this income group is able to bring this number of returns. So the issue will be how can we be able to bring out certain other indicators that can enable them to see that there are actually there's a big market share beyond the income group that they're looking at. That is one thing, and I'd also started by saying that it is possible, first of all, to find out how we can bring the cost of housing down by providing incentives for developers to construct low-cost housing. And this housing will be affordable to the income groups that we are talking about. Banks will be able to see that actually it is possible, it is more secure to lend to these groups. This is a topic that I believe needs to be explored much better. But as an organization, Habitat is focusing on slightly a lower tier of financing institutions that we are trying to work with to ensure that they can provide services to this income group, because we have the microfinance institutions that are also doing lending out there, and all that they need is capacity building. They need strategy development. They need to be supported to develop these products. They need to be linked to clients that can be able to offer them the security to be able to provide this kind of lending arrangements. So one of the policies also will be for the government to see how they can help microfinance institutions to grow, so that they can be able to take up this gap that is actually being left at the moment by the big lending institutions. Yeah.
And you're talking about, putting up a 2-bedroomed house, at a cost of 850,000 shillings, but this is in the rural areas, and we know, income levels in rural areas, cannot be compared with, income levels in urban centers like Nairobi, Mombasa, and so much. And so, I mean, what are the repayment options?
There are many repayment options in the rural areas. We've done it in the past. Of course, in the past, we've had savings and loans group that are working within these income groups, where we have seed capital for which they can loan amongst themselves and repayment. So it provides some financing arrangement. So it is financing that is not very expensive. That is one option, because you can see almost every Kenyan out here is in some saving groups of some sort. I wouldn't be surprised if you are in a circle. So down there are this kind of things, because capital is there. It's just the issue of ensuring that capital is shared in a way that it goes to the person who needs it most. I may not need it now because my house was constructed yesterday. So-and-so needs it, so I'll need it tomorrow for something else. So it's a matter of finding how that capital can also be able to move on the ground there. Secondly, the rural dwellers, you'll find that they have other means that they can also be able to repay. Like there are models where you can even work for somebody to be able work out where somebody can be able to pay through labor Yeah, you are not able to afford a house, but there's an arrangement where a house is available for you. But with the other constructions going around, you can be able to work and be able to pay for that house. So there are many other arrangements, and there are many things that go into the housing that does not need money itself. So look at all the other things, raw materials that are required. If you have, provide it. That still becomes an income for you to pay for your house. I mean, for these houses we are constructed, it requires timber, it requires interlocking blocks. Down there, we have supported groups down there to actually to be able to cure these interlocking blocks. And after doing it, we buy it from them. So it becomes another source of income. So there are many, many other ways that it can be done down there. I see no limits in this. I think it's just a matter of how we go about it. Yeah.
Do you have a situation whereby, I mean, because of the coronavirus pandemic, you know, people are having challenges, you know, repaying for these houses?
That's something that we're analyzing, but I want to express you from a general point of view. First of all, we are launching a cash transfer program in Laikipia, where we're going to provide 2,000 per month to families for the next 6 months. So it's something that we are doing. Even currently, we are still collecting data and validating. It should start anytime this month, so from 15th going onwards. And probably in the process of doing a survey, we came across one beneficiary whom, true, and I can provide you with fact, died as a result of this stress, as a result of not being able to feed very well because of the impact of the pandemic. And this is also what is pushing us to be able to, first of all, we are putting a pause a bit on the construction work we are going to be able to assist, because it's an emergency. So it's already out there. We know we are hearing about people who have lost job, 1.3, so we know it's a situation happening out there. Down in the rural areas is even more worse. Don't be surprised that the rural folks are depending on remittances from people who are also working in the towns. And in the areas where we're working, we also have flower farms, so we have workers who are working on flower farms who are also being affected. So it's a dire situation on the ground. So that's why we are coming up with this initiative. And also, there's a lot of awareness that has gone around about COVID-19, and thanks to the government and the ministry. And we want to applaud them for this. It has really helped to contain the situation. I think more needs to be done in the rural areas. We have the local Wanjiko down there who may not even have the smartphone to be able to see all these nice messages going around. May not be able to have the TV sets to be able to follow the updates. May not even be able to have a radio, let's truth be told. But one thing that I know many people have is a phone. Yeah, at least it's a phone, even if it's not the smartphone, but it's a phone that can receive messages. So sending bulk messages can be able to reach Wanjiko down there. That's something that can be done. Secondly, a simple initiative of just ensuring that the Nyumba Kumi initiative works very well. Ensure that the group leaders in those Nyumba Kumis are well sensitized so that they can be able to pass the information down there. The leaders of Nyumba Kumi initiative can be a very good tool for passing the messages. Look down here. You find somebody who probably knows COVID is there, but believes that once I sanitize my hands, I cannot get COVID. That's a very risky situation. Even if you were to give that person the sanitizer, you won't help. Yeah. So the person needs to know that I'm supposed to sanitize after touching, so not sanitize and then touch. You know? So
in your analysis,
yeah.
I mean, you haven't actually felt, you know, the impact of the coronavirus, you know, on repayment of the loans maybe some people have taken to buy these houses that you provide.
It is there. It has happened.
How bad?
Those are details that we can provide later. We are still doing an analysis, but it is there. The impact is there. Impact on many repayment is happening. And
one of them is the fact that you have to put a freeze on construction of more houses in order for you to cater for the daily needs of your people. And this is also a situation that the government is facing at the same time. A lot of resources are being redirected, towards, the health services, toward the safety nets, and so much. And so, the funds that were set aside for construction of affordable houses, are likely to be affected going forward. And so, do you see a situation whereby the issue of affordable houses, being put into the back burner because of other emerging issues, and how would these, impact the dream of providing affordable houses to Kenyans?
The problem of the impact of COVID-19 is that the buyer or the person who is demanding is not having resources in his hands. That is one. Secondly, the supply of the things that are supposed to be required is probably also not as available as possible. But I probably don't see this as a long term. It's something in the interim. And some of the measures that the government has put in place can be able to help. The issues of ensuring that we start the issues of all sanitation and hygiene ongoing, but then using labor employment coming from the youth. These are some measures that can be able to ensure that money circulates. For us, we feel that on a humanitarian ground, we have to attend to the situation of COVID-19, assist as much as we can, resume this at a particular point in time. We're just giving a 6 months time frame. We hope it doesn't go much beyond that. If we don't attend to the vulnerable, because here we're focused on the vulnerable only, we don't attend to them, whom will we be constructing the houses for? So I think lives are at risk there, and we must be able to attend to them.
It must be attended. Yeah. Nixon, as we wind up, what lessons have you learned, by working with the communities to provide them with affordable housing, that you think the government can learn and apply in its agenda of providing affordable and decent houses to masses?
Actually, I've learned so much. Community have the solutions. I think the problem is we introduce solutions from outside. They have the solutions and they can't be able to do it. Community simply needs to be facilitated. Community is simply facing some barriers, and these barriers are from outside. They are exotic. They are not indigenous. And so we only need to work on these barriers, and you will unlock the potential of the community to be able to do. They only need to be encouraged. We need to be able to go hand in hand with them. Let them see the vision going forward. That's one lesson I'm learning, and I'm seeing that the power to unlock all this is in our communities down there.
It is in our communities. Nixon, thank you so very much indeed for finding time to be with us this morning.
Yeah.
And we look forward for more engagements going forward.
Welcome.
And Nixon Otieno is a Senior Programs Manager at Habitat for Humanity, joining us here on Base Check to help us understand the issue of affordability of houses. Remember, the government has an agenda of providing affordable and decent houses to about 1 million families by the year 2022. There will definitely be an impact because of the coronavirus and funding challenges as well. But the question is, how do we go about this program, and where do we move from here? You're watching Biz Check. I told you my Twitter handle is at O'Brien Kimani, at KBC Channel 1. We are taking a short break, and thereafter we are back with more. Stay right here.
Hamjambo Wakenya wenzangu. Mimi ni Mheshimiwa Mize. Ninalotaka kuambia ni kuwasihi ya kwamba corona iko. Na ili tupigane nayo na tuishinde. Ukikohoa, tafadhali kama una ile ya kujifunika ile tissue, weka mkono hapa. Kama ni chafya yako acho na itabakia pale pale. Kama ni kukohoa yako koholea hapo. Na nakwambia tukizingatia sheria na tuitii, hii corona tutaishinda na nchi yetu tutarudi kama kawaida.
Next on.
Unaambie kama mimi ndio nyumba kubwa, huyo mwingine nyumba ndogo, ama nyumba ndogo na mimi nyumba kubwa.
Wangu jamani, mimi sina nyumba ndogo. Wala banda la uani sina. Wajibikaji kitu gani? Kwa hivyo ni mbebe mgongoni.
Tosha, siko mjadalani hapa. Talaka unatoa utoi?
Talaka stoi?
Nakuuliza tena, talaka unatoa utoi?
Tujeni kazi zenu
Najua nikikupatia kiwango kizuri cha pesa, utanifanyia kazi hii kwa njia nzuri zaidi. Basi nimekuongezea hata na 500 juu.
Aki Mungu akubariki.
Unajua tu Nancy lazima kuna agenda zake.
Nani alikwambia mimi sina agenda zangu?
You again? I want to know exactly what you're planning to do with my life.
Bwana sikuelewi.
This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
What's this?
It is mostly used for washing babies.
I don't have any babies at all.
For the record, I told them this was not a good idea. Someone can die of heart attack.
Shall we move on? Whatever I do in my spare time is none of your business.
What is wrong?
What is there to like here? What is there to like here? Haven't you done any decorations before?
Just tell her what she's doing wrong.
Why do you have to look down on people like that?
Classmates, every Saturday on KBC.
Welcome back. You're watching Biz Check live from Broadcasting House. O'Brien Kimani is my name. Thank you very much indeed for your time. I mean, you know for sure that this is a program whereby we focus on business. And of course, our reporters and correspondents, scattered all over the country. We crisscross the country, actually, to try and see what's happening in most parts of the country. And so we shall be doing that in a short while. We have just had a very engaging discussion here about affordable houses and what's the way forward. And now we want to switch gears and talk about something else, digital lending. We know them. They have been with us here. Are they part of the solution or part of the problem? Joining us this morning is Digital Lenders Association of Kenya chairperson or spokesperson. This is Kevin Motiso. Kevin, so thank you so very much indeed for finding time to be here with us. I mean, you were saying that you have a thought or two on how this whole concept can be implemented on time and on budget?
So thank you, first of all, for having me. It's quite an honor to come to KBC Studios. I used to work just across the road and I never entered here, so thank you. Yeah, I thought the conversation around affordable housing was rather engaging. I think there were very good ideas. But I just wanted to put in a couple of thoughts. I sit on a think tank that has been working on how to improve Big Four agenda. And it comprises of young, innovative Kenyans. And what we finally finished the first draft. And one of the most interesting insights was about the affordable housing. So what most people may not know is that the current way that it's structured for purchase makes it 4 times more expensive as a monthly payment as a mortgage. And so one of the very clever ideas that is coming out from this think tank is the low-cost rental housing, where actually you provide these really good houses, have a rent control body in particular areas. I heard you mentioning Eastlands, for example, which was built for something like this. And then you control the rents so that it caters for a specific demographic. This has worked in New York, it's worked in Israel, it's worked in many other countries. And it's something that we can actually achieve if we want to, sort of solve that 2 million housing deficit.
But how does it work in a liberalized market like ours?
I think it's just about regulation. You already have a framework for the affordable housing scheme, right? You're trying to solve a very pertinent societal problem, and therefore there has to be balance between the commercial and the social good that good low-cost housing brings. The other interesting insight was that, and you kept pressing on it, was land prices, right? Land prices are high. And one of the insights that came out is that why not make Kiambu County or Machakos County the master bedroom of Nairobi? Right, where you can have these engagements between private sector, incentivize private sector, private developers. We say a one-stop shop, a short approval process. Part of the way developers calculate return is by the amount it takes to get approvals and etc. done. If it takes 4 years, of course, it affects the return on equity. If it takes 6 months, then you've sort of shortened the time frame for achieving that return. So those are the 2 very good ideas I saw from that document that I felt were not spoken about before, and I just thought, let me just add something small.
Are you likely to share this document with the government, or who are you working with the
well,
document for?
it's basically a public document that we just want to share as part of the ethos of we are young Kenyans. The next, next 20 years, you look like a gentleman between the age of 30 and 40. If you don't realize this now, it's us who are going to sort of take control of certain aspects of the economy, certain aspects of the media, and we need to start thinking sort of 30 years, 40 years into the future, because you have kids who are 10, below 10, and you have to take them to school. You have to make sure they can afford healthcare. You want them to have a decent salary. You want them to be safe. So the objective of the document is actually it's apolitical. It's just good ideas from different parts of the economy from young Kenyans. So no international interference, nothing like that.
And I mean, it sounds very interesting, that, a certain caucus of Kenyans, would think about coming together to try and harness solutions, to some of the pressing challenges, that we are facing. Number one, without government intervention, and number two, without financial assistance, from donors. I mean, what about, this kind of a concept or thought?
Well, one, I think when you think about donors, it's about funding, and this is what we're going to speak about when we segue into DLAC and digital lending. I think there's a misconception on what capital is. Money is not just, capital is not just money. There's also the social capital. And the last 40 years, 50 years, we celebrated Madaraka the other day, 57 years. We've been generating and building and creating a very, very well-educated class of Kenyans who are not politically connected as you think, have worked in very difficult industries across the world. Right now, we have a Kenyan who was a classmate of mine in high school working in the National Health Service in the UK, and he's managing a whole section of the UK healthcare service,
Yeah.
right? And he's in his 30s. So when I say we have a lot of talent in the country, there is. So what we did is we used those networks in terms of talent, people we know, said, look, we're thinking about this. What do you think about contributing from where you sit, particularly if you're in private sector? Because to solve a lot of the problems we have today is we have to have this consultative approach between private sector and government. So when we segue into DLAC, you'll realize that the Digital Lenders Association of Kenya is not a lobby group in the way most people think. It's actually a collection of members who've come together to share ideas on how to improve the industry for themselves and make that large impact that digital lending can have in society.
Interesting. I mean, I think, we shall touch base, on a different platform and see how exactly, the document looks like. But let's now get into the topic of the day. The Digital Lenders Association of Kenya, how is it looking now with coronavirus?
So what is the status of digital lending?
You can put it that way too.
That's a good question. Digital lending is a nascent industry. It's young. It's 6 years old. We've come from very far. People may not remember, but companies like Tala used to be called Mkopo Rahisi. Safaricom's Mshwari was rolled out to a very small group of people. It was on a USSD platform. In 2014, we only had 500,000 people on the Credit Reference Bureau. Today we have 11 million people on the Credit Reference Bureau. Today, when in 2014, 2015, when we started as Shika in 2016, but when the industry was being born, we had less than 100,000 customers in total. Today we serve over 5 million customers.
As digital lenders.
And then what's very unique about what we do is we serve a very specific niche, which is the informal sector. So these are the people who don't have a business license, they don't have a company, they don't have KRA PIN, they don't have an SSF, an HIF. And so you have this, what we've become very good at is using algorithms to determine what an SME, an informal sector entrepreneur looks like without all those standard documents that banks normally look at. And so what we are really proud of is that growth. In sort of 5-6 years, we've been able to move from 100,000 customers to 5 million customers, and then that ability to say that guy there is a boda boda guy, so he can get a loan. That guy is that person can get a loan. That lady there is a mamamboga, she can get a loan. So that's what we've become really good at. And what we are also very proud of is that we exist in this ecosystem in Kenya that is very conducive for innovations like ours. I think the press makes it seem, or rather, when people are reporting about digital lending, it always makes it seem like it's us versus government. But government has been fantastic in enabling our industry. If you think about what, some of the reforms around personal identification information, which is IPRS, the ability to pull data from a central government database to confirm your ID number is you and not a fraudulent person or not your brother or sister. If you think about the emergence of the credit information sharing mechanism, the CRB, which is often misrepresented as a blacklist, which is not true. A Credit Reference Bureau is basically O'Brien starting his journey, starting his credit history. He's a hustler, he's a survivor, he's a businessman. Before 2014, there was no place to check if that mamamboga had taken a loan somewhere else and if she's an honest person. Today, we have 11 million entrepreneurs on one platform where we share data and we pull data from, and we're able to see that guy there that's a good person. That one is a bad person.
Motiso, help me here. I mean, the digital lenders, they saw a niche market. They saw a market that was not attended, and they decided to jump into it. Kenyans saw an opportunity that has been presented. They also jumped on it, and the business started. How much of interest do you charge your lenders?
So interest is charged differently across the sector. So you've got Shika, for example, charges 15% per month.
15%?
Yeah, you've got...
that's about 0.5% on a daily basis.
Yes, but that's a huge misconception again, right? So the way most people are, the way we price money is very different from the way a bank prices money, right?
What is your pricing model?
Yes, so that's what I want to explain. So the informal sector does not work like a normal company. It doesn't work like KBC where you have an invoice and then in 30 days you pay the invoice, and then in the bank, if you needed the money before that 30-day came, you got a working capital loan, right? In the informal sector, the way it works is my 1,000 shillings is what I go buy, and then I sell that same day, right? And the margins in the informal sector are huge. They're 200, 300, 400% on an item, right? That's why food prices are so high. Right? Even if you've ever wondered why a tomato is so expensive, it's because of that. Because by the time it gets from my shags in Kutus and comes all the way to Nairobi, there's a lot of middlemen, there's a lot of guys just adding on their 50% margin, their 30% margin. By the time it gets to Nairobi, right, that margin has to be priced in and it's sold to you. So you have to put that into context. So most of our borrowers take our money for 1 day, for 7 days, for 15 days, and most, like the longest you'll ever see is 30 days, right? So what the guy does, or what the lady does, is she looks, today I have 1,000 shillings in my pocket. If I go to a digital lender, I add another 2,000 bob. I go buy my potatoes from Kingangop. I bring them to Nairobi. I sell them to McFry's in town, and I make 700-800% on top. I pay Kevin his 15%. I keep my profit. And that's the impact we're having. So when pricing is being talked about, I think it's being misrepresented because you're looking at an orange and trying to make it seem like an apple.
So the 15%, is it fixed? Is it on incremental?
Yes.
So it is fixed.
Yes, because it's a short time
if I borrow, for example, 3,000 shillings at a rate of 15%, and then I pay after 2 days, how much interest would that accrue?
It will accrue the amount of the value, the 15%. So that will be 450.
450.
Yes, but you're forgetting the Mama Mboga has made 8,000 with my 3,000. Well, so she's an expense.
I mean, it is that is not.
By the way,
that is not supported by empirical evidence. Because
it is. FSD did a report in 2019.
Who is this?
FSD, the financial sector.
The financial sector deepening
sector. And what they found was that, first of all, pricing is not one of their top issues. So again, let's not misrepresent the facts. Pricing is not an issue in that informal sector. They need access to capital. That's what they want. So if somebody is charging 100%, now you can say, okay, you're being unfair. But if you're charging 450 on a 3,000 shilling, by the time I've paid CRB, by the time I've paid Safaricom for the transaction, by the time I have come up with an algorithm that can determine that Mama Mboga is the one to get it, why are we going to make profit? So we have to come up with a system of equilibrium where the market and the lender have to agree on the price, and you spoke about it with a liberal economy. That's the beauty about Kenya, that we have a free market economy. So when people come and tell us about price, and the customer is not complaining about price, we are focusing on the wrong thing. That's my
I mean, but what makes, borrowing from digital lenders an expensive undertaking? Because 15%, after 2 days, 450 shillings, for 2,000 shillings, that's considerably high. But what makes it very expensive, or how do you arrive how do you price your credit?
So again, it's not high. My point is that the customer is not complaining about the price, right? So you're conflating that item of price. Price is only affecting people who sit in corporate and look at a business the way a business is supposed to be run. So KBC cannot be run on a 15% per month interest. It's probably running at 13, which is the central bank rate and the bank rate. An informal sector worker first of all, had no access to capital. So before us, there was no one giving them money. It was their family, they were borrowing, and any other means they were doing. Now we're doubling their access to capital. If you had 3,000, we're giving you 6. Some of the digital lenders are giving up to 20,000 shillings on their second or third loan. That's huge. Now, what goes into pricing of this money? It's usually a combination of things. You have the operational expenses, such as the cost of building algorithms, the cost of services, etc., like Safaricom. But you also have the cost of money. So where we get money from at this stage, because it's such a young industry, is not from the banks. We get it from very expensive sources. And we get these, and we usually get it in dollars. So we also have to mitigate currency risk.
Yep.
And that's how we price money. So it's a combination of the OPEX, the risk, and the cost of capital.
Let's talk about an opportunity that digital lenders saw, and then they optimized the existing opportunity. And here you are. We have had situations whereby people are borrowing on digital platforms. They run into problems when it comes to repayment.
Yes.
And some of them have even, we have had cases of people who have ended up committing suicide. I don't have any case that I can quote, but those are issues that we have had. The issue was actually even discussed in Parliament the other day, and Parliament was actually harsh on digital lenders. It was saying these are predatory lenders. How did you get to a point whereby people are looking at digital lenders, from those kind of lenses?
Yes, that's a very fair point. As I said earlier, we are a 6-year-old industry, so we are going to make mistakes, and what we need is regulation, which is something that we've been very clear, both to Parliament, both to the central bank, and of course the executive. We want to be regulated. Why? Because regulation manages the bad actors. So we have some bad actors in our digital lending ecosystem. They are not members of the Digital Lenders Association of Kenya. If you have gotten a message, or your mother or your sister has gotten a message telling them to pay you back, those are not members of the Digital Lenders Association, because they do not abide by our code of conduct. Now, the suicide was something that was very unfortunate, and we actually really empathize and sympathize with that family. But I want to put it into context. Recently, the central bank governor gave a report to KEPSA where he presented some numbers. He talked about the number of loans that have been restructured since the COVID crisis began.
Yep.
And he gave us a number of 273 billion shillings have been restructured as a result of the COVID crisis. And he said that represents about 10% of the total loans in the banking sector, which is about 2.8 trillion shillings, right? Now, let me put it for you in focus. Now, 273 billion was restructured, and it represented 47,000 loans, 47,000 customers.
Yep.
In that same presentation, the central bank governor was asked a question, and he said, the digital lenders are small and only represent 0.01% of lending, which is true. We only lend about 5 billion shillings a month as an industry. However, when you look at the quantum of the money, it seems like the 280 billion is more important. But remember, those are only 47,000 rich people who earn, and when you do the math, 273 divided by 47,000 is 5 million shillings, right, per customer. So you're having an average loan size of 5 million being restructured, which is quite close, right? So that's not somebody as, too rich or too wealthy. Whereas we lend
allow me also to put that into perspective, because I managed to go through that report and through that data. And the way you're putting it, yes, it is true. The number of loans that were renegotiated, was about 273 billion Kenya shillings, with about 44,000, Kenyans, are going to the banks, to say, hey, look here, we need or I need to restructure my loan. But the Central Bank of Kenya said that a lot of these restructured loans, almost 60% of them were from SMEs. Okay?
Yeah, that sounds right.
SMEs. And the loan, the loan size of an SME in Kenya is between 20,000 to $5 million Kenya shillings. And yeah.
No, that's not true. The SME is defined as a company that does, in Kenyan context, 10 million shillings in revenue, all the way to $1 billion.
No, I'm talking about MSME.
Yes. No, MSME is something completely different.
That's
it's
what I'm talking about.
Informal sector.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm talking about the MSMEs.
Yes.
You know, the MSME sector.
Yes.
And when you look at, you know, the loan size of MSMEs here in this country, I mean, it will vary between 10,000 to about 15 million Kenya shillings. And so it is not proper to say that all of them, you know, had a loan size of about 5 million. I mean, you had MSMEs whose loan size was about 20,000, 30,000, you know, people who are selling, like, for example, second-hand clothes, you know, they were forced to close their market. And it's proper to put that also into perspective. Of course, there were also businesses and people, you know, with a loan size of 10 million, 50 million shillings, you know, who had their loans restructured as well.
Yes, and that's my point, right? So my point is that the banking sector has restructured 273 billion shillings, right? And that only represented 47,000 customers, as you've rightly said, who are SME, right? Who take SME take much larger tickets. So 500,000 all the way up to, say, 100, 200 million shillings would be considered an SME. MSME is much smaller, and that's what I'm calling informal sector. So that's somebody who doesn't have a PIN, doesn't have a company, cannot really access banking service because of certain things that the bank has to do before they provide them a banking service, because of law, because of regulation. My point is that 273 billion represents 47,000 customers. 0.01, which equals 5 billion shillings, represents 4 million customers.
The micro,
yes.
The micro borrowers.
Yes. And so to make it seem like we are not important, that the digital lending ecosystem is not important, I think is a very difficult thing to hear, because we literally affect and positively impact 4 million entrepreneurs every month.
Every month.
Every month. So even if we lend a little compared to the 200 and something billion, that 5 billion is circulating every month as new capital into the informal sector. So it is in the best interest of government, in my opinion, that they want to support initiatives that will positively impact those 4 million. You had asked me a question before we sort of steered away into how we choose and select customers. You'd be surprised to find that we actually reject nearly 90% of applicants who come onto our platforms for loans, right? And the reason for that is what I was saying earlier, is that we've been working on identifying what an informal entrepreneur looks like. Yeah.
And I mean, so the regulations on how to police, you know, micro lenders, you know, are yet to be finalized.
Yes.
And central bank plus other stakeholders like you know, the Communications Authority of Kenya, you know, have been trying to come up, you know, with regulations on how to deal with these. How would a regulated micro lending environment look like, especially for you as stakeholders?
I think the best way to position the regulation is actually through the regulatory framework that manages financial stability. The reason for that is, as the governor rightly said in that same presentation, that that customer protection has to be the key and the core focus of any regulation. So you want to make sure the data is safe. You want to make sure that the collection methods are humane and not, some of the things we're seeing outside, it's crazy stuff. You want to make sure that we're using risk-based lending models so that you're not creating biases within your algorithms, something that was seen in the US. You want to make sure that there's a clear proof of where the money has come from to avoid money laundering laws, money laundering and all these illicit money flows coming
through. There must be some form of KYC.
KYC, proof of ownership, beneficial ownership, so that you know where this money is coming from and all the way line back. I think we also need to create a framework for these digital lenders that are non-bank to work in tandem with banks, because the banks play a very instrumental role in ensuring financial stability, and I think we could also be part of that story as digital lenders in the ecosystem.
And tell me this, are you been involved in drafting the regulations that will, govern the micro lending environment?
I imagine that a process will be formed. The Constitution of Kenya allows for public participation. So, of course, when that time comes, we will engage with the government and with the policymakers in the channels that have been given to us legally.
Motiso, do you agree with me that they may or they may not be part of the Digital Lenders Association of Kenya, but do you agree that there are some lenders who have employed exploitative tendencies when it comes to lending to their customers?
Yes, I agree, and I think it's something that Digital Lenders Association of Kenya really wants to show, that there are different sides to this ecosystem.
And how then do you deal with them? Because look, they may be tarnishing the name of good lenders as well.
Yes, and so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to say and we're trying to show and demonstrate to all the relevant authorities and regulatory frameworks that exist in this country that we are the ones to work with. Here is our code of conduct. Here are some of the initiatives we've already set in place to, help and enable this amazing technology while managing the bad players in the ecosystem.
Very good. I mean, Motiso, hold on there. We want to go to Kenyatta International Convention Center, whereby the CEO of KICC, Nana Geshaga, is speaking to the press. Let's listen.
The second day, within 2 weeks of being able to do that, and we will continue to support yourself, CS, and any other arms of government. It is a very noble initiative, and as I said before, this is just the second of many, and we look forward to many more. And
let me welcome the CEO of NSSF, Dr. Merikwa, to make his remarks.
Our guest of honor, CS Musheru, CSS present, PS, CEO is present here, our partners, the border team, and my colleagues. Good morning. Mine will be very brief. In addition to this worthy cause of trying to flatten the curve, NSSF last year came up with a product targeted at the informal sector. As you know very well, 80% of those employed in this country fall within the brackets of the informal sector. I'll just give a brief history of NSSF. After independence, and as an outcome of the sessional paper number 10, NSSF was formed. The intention of NSSF was to take care of people upon retirement, after retirement, when you move out of formal employment. Since independence until around 2013, when NSF Act was formed, we were focusing more on the formal sector. Now we are focusing on the formal sector, and we came up with a product that gets the people in the informal sector. and it is very easy to become a member and contribute. We are pillioning on the ability and the fact that over 83% of Kenyans have access shillings per day. You can get out your money, reinvest.
Another situation, bad signal down there at Kenyatta International Convention Center there. But it is the Ministry of ICT that has brought together, different players in government circles to offer free PPEs, hand sanitizers, and among other things to the young people, in a bid to help curb the spread of coronavirus. That event is taking place at KICC, bringing together different stakeholders from KICC itself to national or NSSF, among others, and the NSSF managing trustee, Mr. Omerikwa, was actually giving a brief history of how NSSF came into force. We are trying to stabilize the network there, and immediately that is done, we'll definitely take you there. But let's come back here and discuss more about digital lending. If you have you ever, or are you a beneficiary of digital lenders? What is your experience with digital lenders? I have given you my Twitter handle, which is @O'Brien Kimani. Just alert me on your experience with digital lenders, and then we see how we can handle it from here. We are with Ken Mutiso. He's the spokesperson of Digital Lenders Association of Kenya, which has about 20 affiliated lenders in a market that has about 100 digital lenders. And the question that we were asking ourselves is, with about 20 of them, out of 100 digital lenders in the Kenyan market, being members of the Digital Lenders Association of Kenya, how then do you manage this kind of an industry so that you do not have a situation whereby one apple is messing up with the other 100 or with the other apples in the basket? And that's the question that we are dealing with, and we are trying to offer some solutions on how you're going about this.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that question. So yes, you're right. We have about 20 digital lenders as members of the Digital Lenders Association of Kenya. As those 20 members, we lend about 5 billion shillings every month into the...
5 billion shillings.
Yes. And I think we represent 95% of all the non-bank digital lenders in the market. So if there are 150 digital lenders and only 20 are members of DLAC, all the 130 represent only 5% of what our lending volumes are. So that's point number one. Point number two, that's why we are singing and screaming as loud as possible for regulation. We are the ones who've put up the most capital in this ecosystem.
Yep.
We've invested quite a bit of money, our own time into this endeavor. And we believe that this technology can have massive positive impact. So what we're saying is regulate us. Let's regulate us using a consultative approach, so that we gain together.
You gain together. Tell me this. As an association, a lot of people, or you have gained a reputation of offering, your loans at a highly exploitative rate, whether true or false. But this is somehow, messing or soiling the reputation of digital lenders. How do you plan to redeem your image going forward?
Well, I think our image, again, it's a matter of public. It's who's looking at us, right? If you ask the mama mboga on the street, she'll tell you she loves digital lenders. Mm-hmm. If you ask anyone in the banking sector, they'll tell you they love digital lenders because we are helping them solve very difficult challenges. And by the way, they will be our partners. They have to be our partners in the long run anyway, because we have all these innovative solutions. The people who do not like us are those people who do not want to pay the loans, right? There are those people who are rejected by the algorithms. And of course, there are those mistakes we've made. And those mistakes are where we want to focus on, because we have made some mistakes as an industry. These mistakes were made because we were young, we didn't know what data sets work and what data sets don't work. And so there was a time in 2018, I remember, that there was this hula baloo that we are the ones lending to the youth to take bets on the betting platforms. Now, if you think about it from a lender's perspective, it would be extremely foolish to lend to people who bet. Because if we lend 2,000 shillings, right, we need a quantum of loans to make money. So we literally want to lend to 100,000 people who take an average of 2,000, so you have 200 million shillings out.
Allow me, to try and correct a misposition there, that the people who are soiling your name are people who are not willing to pay, the people who have defaulted, on repayment, or people who have been rejected by the system. But I want to take you to the National Assembly and Parliament floor. The floor of the Parliament was the scene of this debate on the 11th of March this year. And the debate was brought about by Mathare, Member of Parliament, Honorable Oluoch. And this is what he said on the floor of the House. Digital borrowing has become a social menace responsible for suicides, divorce, family breakups, and increased listing of loan defaulters by the Credit Reference Bureau. It was a long discussion, debate in Parliament, whereby a committee was formed to look into the affairs of your business. And so it is not just the borrowers, who have raised issues. Even the highest legislative organ in this country, in the name of a National Assembly, have also waded into this discussion, and which means that there is something. And in Africa, we say, where you see smoke,
there's fire.
There could be fire around there.
And I love that Parliament and that the MP did what he did, because this is a conversation that should be had at the highest levels of the citizens' representation. So the Member of Parliament and the parliamentary committee that was set up are doing the right thing. You're listening to your people, and you're now engaging with the sector and the industry to find out where is the problem, and then together we solve it. So I think that's fantastic. To say that and then to talk about the debate, right? You've mentioned digital, so you said digital lending, the MP said suicide, divorce, and increased listing. This is what I'm saying. This is true, right? But when you're lending to 4 million people, don't be surprised if you make a mistake with 10,000 or 50,000. And 50,000 is loud in this market. We only have about 30,000 mortgages, right? Let me give you another number. In 2014, 500,000 people on the Credit Reference Bureau. 2020, 11 million. Of those 11 million, only 2 million have a negative borrowing record, right? So take that into context. So only 20% have a negative borrowing record. So this increased listing is going to happen by default, because the point of a Credit Reference Bureau and a credit information sharing mechanism is to have everyone's credit record, be it good or be it bad. And when you see 20% are negatively listed, you know there's a problem in the economy. If you look at any major economy in the world, one of the key trackers is how many people are negatively listed on a credit bureau. And if it's below a certain number, you know that the general health is good. If it's above a certain number, you know the general health is bad. So the data is telling a story, but it's not telling the full story. And the point of this parliamentary committee is for the story to be told. And I think it's a fantastic thing that's happening.
The full story. A lot of digital lenders in these markets, their lending rates will range between 15 to 19%. But when you look at, their returns on their savings, will be between 5 to around 8%. How would you explain such high level of discrepancy?
So non-bank lending, digital lenders don't take deposits, so that doesn't affect us. That affects the banks who are regulated. Only regulated entities can take deposits. And so they have, in fact, that is why they're always being pushed to lend at lower rates, because they're being asked, if your cost of capital is 5%, why are you lending at these exorbitant rates? Our cost of capital is so high, we're paying almost 19% on the dollar, right? So we have very, very expensive capital.
And would you say this is fair? I mean, when you look at, the pricing model of savings vis-a-vis loans?
I think you mentioned it earlier. I think to affect a market economy and a free market is not a good idea. The financial system is the blood. It's how value moves. It's how value is exchanged. And so if the market has a pricing mechanism that has been set, I believe from economic theory that you should let it be. And so if a deposit is at 5, that means there's oversupply of capital. If pricing of the loan is high, that means there's demand for capital, right? And so, and there's a mismatch on risk. So I think oversimplifying it, oversimplifying the financial system is a huge mistake, because it's more complex. It holds every facet of the economy. Yeah.
You were talking about, the number of people who are registered with Credit Reference Bureau. You're talking about 11.2 million
About
people?
11 million, yes.
About 11 million people. And when you also look at the number of defaulters, or people who have been put on the blacklist, is about 2.3, 2.5 million people. How many of these are because of micro lenders? Do you have those figures?
It must be, it must be because of digital lending, either bank or non-bank. So this assumption that it's only us who list, everyone who gives credit, from the Shylock to the digital lender, to the SACCO, to your microfinance institution, to your, if you're a registered chama, submits data to the credit bureau. If I look at O'Brien's file today, if you've ever taken a Shika loan, a KCB loan, a SACCO loan, and a Shylock's loan, I will see that data there. I will see which one you paid, I will see which one you repaid, I'll see which one you didn't pay on time, which one you always paid on time. So that's what a credit reference bureau is. It's a record of your credit history. So that 2.5 million has come from everywhere. So if you've ever defaulted somewhere, yeah,
that's what I was asking. I mean, how many of these 2.5 can be attributed to non-payment to digital lenders, like the one the business that you are in?
So none. I think it would be a very low number of about 500,000, because most of the people who had money to lend were the banks. So all those defaults are coming from Mshwari, KCB, M-Pesa, the bank lenders who have been there for a longer time and have had larger balance sheets. Remember, Mshwari, for example, does 25 billion shillings in lending every month. We do 5 billion shillings in lending every month.
They do 5 times more than
that. So they do 5 times more than. In fact, even the central bank governor mentioned it that day. So what's my point? If you lend more, then you're obviously the one submitting more data into the credit bureau. Therefore, the most defaults would come from the person giving the most loans, which is the banks.
Tell me things. I mean, on 20th or 25th of last month, we saw President Uhuru Kenyatta issuing a directive that CRBs stop adding more members into the blacklist book because of the impact of the coronavirus. So how is this likely to impact digital lenders in accessing the profile of would-be borrowers going forward?
It has completely and negatively affected our business. So nearly all the 100 digital lenders in the market, none are lending. And this is why I'm here today. I'm saying there are 4 million micro informal sector entrepreneurs not getting access to their much needed capital. Because without access to a credit bureau, we cannot lend. So we are all not lending. We are all sitting and waiting for the regulation to come out to show us how to engage with the credit bureau. Because the key piece of infrastructure is the credit reference bureau. That is the most important piece. If we want Kenya to be successful, that piece has to work. And that has been proven across the world.
But how would you balance? I mean, again, we have to be alive to the fact that, you know, the virus has impacted many businesses. And of course, most of the businesses affected are members who would obviously go into your services. And so how do you ensure there is a balance between non-repayment of loans because of the prevailing situation and non-repayment because a borrower doesn't feel like paying?
Yes, fantastic. So yesterday, the National Treasury had called for ideas that could be put into the budget. They had called it, tips and ideas for the Kenya government to ponder. The Digital Lenders Association put forth a plan to solve that exact problem. So you are right. The informal sector has been negatively affected by the COVID crisis and they need capital, right? We have not gotten access to the credit bureau and so we are unable to lend, right? So there's that sort of limbo. So we want to lend money but we can't, and the people who need money can't receive it because there's an issue we need to solve. So that's point number one. What we propose to solve this, right, of course on top of the regulation, is the creation of a restart fund that can be partnered with the banking sector, the Digital Lenders Association of Kenya, and private players like bilateral, multilateral institutions that gives 20,000 shillings, right? We want to run a pilot where we give 20,000 shillings to the informal sector worker, give them that money for 90 days, so 3 times what we normally give them for.
3 months.
Yeah, 3 months, and then reduce the price by almost 90%. Right? From the 15 you're charging now, a lot less based on that 90. There's a pricing, there's a way we price, so it would come to about 90% cheaper.
90%, and so you're talking about...
No, it's not a straight line. So it's not a straight line. The way, because you calculate it using a different model. But if it was for 90 days, it's now 90% cheaper. Now, what that will do is that it will put money into the informal sector, the 4 million people that we were talking about. They can restart their business. So if you're a mama mboga, you have 20,000 shillings to go and get some money. If you're a boda guy, now you can get fuel. A lot of the Uber those guys have lost a lot of business and don't even have money for simple things like that fuel to just get out of the house and start their day. 20,000 shillings in this economy can do a lot. And the idea is that we want to run a pilot, 50,000 customers, and we show the world, we show Kenyans, this is the impact we can have, so that then we now institutionalize this fund so that it becomes what we call a first loss risk. Because the challenge also with digital lending is a first loan, if you don't have a credit history, is very risky. And so we usually are very scared of giving that loan. If we can entrench and institutionalize first loss in a regulatory framework, and somebody is able to share the risk with us for that first loan, that is also going to be a revolutionary piece of infrastructure.
In the interest of time, because time is really pacing, have you done any loan loss provision for digital lenders and how the coronavirus is likely to impact you?
We were the hardest hit. It could be, I think by now it should be up to about 60-65% of delinquency.
65%?
Yes.
Of delinquencies?
Yes, because the mama mboga is always the person who's hit the first by any crisis because she has no savings. You see, big businesses have cash cover.
That, a number of digital lenders, are likely actually to go out of the market.
Of course. It's a very risky time. I can't say the number, but a huge number would go out of business if we're not careful. And I think that's dangerous because they have a lot of good and clever technology that could go into wasteland if we're not careful.
Yeah. And a rescue plan is, one of the rescue plans is what you are proposing to the National our treasury.
Yes, we submitted our ideas as we were asked. We hope it gains some traction.
Mm-hmm. If it doesn't?
Well, lenders are survivors. We will definitely, I don't think if it doesn't is an option at this point. We are very confident that...
It is one of the options.
I personally have dedicated my life to serve entrepreneurs, and so if there's a way we can find and reopen the market, this lending market to our 4 million customers, we are going to find it. So I'm very confident about that.
Mm-hmm. Because when you're talking about, 20,000 shillings to about 4 million people, so you're talking about 8 billion shillings.
No, it's okay, about 80 billion shillings.
80 billion shillings.
Yes. But the pilot is only 50,000 shillings.
Oh, 50,000.
Yeah, 50,000 SMEs. So 80 billion sounds like a lot of money, but when you put it into context, it's $800 million. $800 million is available globally. The World Bank, for example, has $160 billion they have to distribute to emerging economies by June 2021. So is the money available for initiatives like this? Yes. It doesn't even need to come from government. Then that's what we are saying.
There are institutions who are willing to
I'm not saying the World Bank is going to do something. I'm just saying that I know the World Bank, the president of the World Bank announced last week that they have 160 billion they need to distribute by the end of June 2021. The IMF president, lady, also said they're willing to help governments solve these unique challenges. You've got the European Investment Bank, the European Union, that can do direct deals without going through government, that have funds dedicated for these kinds of initiatives. So 80 billion in the global context is money that can achieve. And if you look at the return on investment on that 80 billion shillings, it could have a massive impact of 300, 400, 500 times that in the next 5 years.
The next 5 years. Motiso, thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us this morning. Now it's coming to almost 12 o'clock.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Welcome.
Good luck and all the best.
Thank you so much.
Well, Kevin Motiso is the spokesperson for Digital Lenders Association of Kenya, joining us here and putting some very interesting figures that about between 60 and 65% of digital lenders, are facing a serious cash flow issues because of non-repayment of loans. And this is because of the coronavirus pandemic. They're also raising concerns with the fact that they cannot access the Credit Reference Bureau data so that they can actually decide who they are going to lend to and who actually do not qualify. And according to him, digital lenders are not lending at all because there's not data. You have been watching Base Check live from Broadcasting House. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Remember, we have another date with you at 9 p.m. on Business Insight. You need to stay right here for you to find out what we shall be discussing at that time. Tamarini is coming up next with Nancy Okware. You had better stay right here for that and more. Have a good afternoon.